I am so tired of coming on this podcast every single week and telling you to stop playing T.Y. Hilton. Like, just stop it.
Mikey needs help.
Mikey needs help.
I was like, if you don't have Jeff Wilson in here, and if you don't run it on first down, I'm going to strangle you through that TV.
You should know better than everyone else. That fool tears you up when you plays you.
Yeah, but
Don't you want him on your team?
I have him at number 25.
Thank you. Fine. Todd's the reasonable one on this show.
I take issue with everything he said there.
Well,
I really do.
DeAndre Swift. He's going to break them tackles, son.
That's bold. That's bold. That's putting your nuts on the table right there.
Hey, there's the first time for everything.
Waxing poetic over here with Todd Diamond.
Dude's old.
So what? He's not as old as Brady, and you're jerking him off before the show starts.
I have Sutton in my top 10. I have him at number 9. Yes.
You know what? I'm just canceling the league. I can't do this with you guys. We're handing out our 2022 MHA Podcast Awards. I was trying to think of a name. They have different names like the Oscars or
The Golden Globes.
or something like that, Golden Globes, but maybe something will pop up as we're talking along here. But hooray, we're handing out 7 awards here this season. We got some awards including the Bust of the Year, the Comeback Player of the Year, and of course, the most valuable player of the fantasy season. So glad you're joining us here on this podcast. Todd Diamond, Mikey Renault, and Eric Lansing here as your well-dressed hosts. You guys came ready and dressed up, ready to roll, right?
Absolutely.
Got the ties and the tuxedo.
I'm wearing a tuxedo as we speak. It's great.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like you are.
I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt with paint stains.
Oh, well. That's not really up to MHA award protocol. I think you need to step up your game a little bit.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
actually,
No one's wearing Calvin Klein or Chanel or anything.
No.
I'm wearing a North Carolina hoodie. That's something.
Okay, that's something. I'm wearing Roadrunners. What a surprise. And Mikey's wearing a paint stained shirt. At least he's got the guns out. I guess that'll attract some of the celebrities that are going to pass through here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. All right. MHA awards. Off to a great start. So how did we come up with the awards? Well, we had some nominees and some winners. All 3 of us came together, brought our own suggestions for each category, talked about it, hashed it out, and voted. And so Mikey and Todd, as we go through here, I'll announce the winner and kind of talk about that winner, and feel free to be like, well, I didn't pick that guy. He wasn't my winner. And feel free to give us some of your thoughts, and you can give us your thoughts about any of the nominees really as we go along. So it should be fun to kind of look back on this season as a whole. We'll look back on this season as a whole and kind of talk about who did well, who didn't, and how things kind of panned out for, especially the playoff teams and the eventual champions. So let's get into these awards, and we'll start with the T.Y. Hilton Award. You hear it on the intro of this show every week. Mikey complaining about how T.Y. Hilton was being started every week despite his putrid production. So we decided to make an award out of it. So featuring a player that is being started way too often despite the lack of points coming from said player. So here are your nominees for the T.Y. Hilton Award. Nominee number 1, DJ Moore. The Panthers wide receiver was started by the notorious CUP squad 5 times, in which he produced 5 points or less. Number 2 nominee, Kyle Pitts. The much ballyhooed tight end for the Falcons was started 9 times this season by Kilgore Trout, in which Pitts scored 10 points 0 times. In fact, he had 7 games of 5 points or less. And the final nominee for the T.Y. Hilton Award, Russell Wilson. The Butterfingers had high aspirations for the new Broncos QB, thus also drafting Jerry Jeudy, who also didn't have the best season. The former Seattle gunslinger was started 6 times when he provided less than 40 points. So those are your nominees for the T.Y. Hilton Award. And the winner is Kyle Pitts. I feel like this was an easy call, although with the state of tight ends, it kind of gives you pause to figure out, do you go a different direction? Because we all understand how the landscape of tight ends go, but at some point during the season, when a tight end is not giving you anything, really, you got to go in a different direction. And Mikey, you made a good point how the injury to Pitts actually saved Kilgore Trout's season.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what would have happened if Pitts didn't get injured and then, Joe didn't pick up Evan Ingram. Does he beat
Yeah.
me? Who knows? I mean,
Someone else could have picked up Evan Ingram, or he could have kept starting Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Yep. Getting rid of that crappy guy and putting in Evan Ingram of all people. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Turned out
remember
pretty
Evan
well
Ingram?
for him.
It definitely did. He ended up going to finish second overall, despite the many weeks of 7 points or less. The 9 times he started Kyle Pitts. So I think we were all in agreement with this one. DJ Moore, we understand the Panthers and their quarterback situation, and CUP kept throwing him out there. And of course, Todd with his love of Russell Wilson. And I don't know if it was Russell Wilson and lack of quarterback options out in the free agency, but rough to see, especially how important QBs are in our league.
Yeah, it was. Obviously, my choice was Russell Wilson because I think there was so much high expectations, whether it's reality or fantasy, at the end of the day, and there was so many expectations, and it was just like are we in bizarro world? I understand maybe having a few bad games, just trying to get, in a rhythm and new system, new coach. Obviously the coach isn't there anymore, but just was there. It was just bad. It was just kind of sad to watch, but I was like, come on, he'll figure it out. This is Russell Wilson. He's, oh God.
Country, let's rock.
God dang it.
Let's rock.
Very, very good. Very good.
Let's die.
Let's die. Or like I said, the best meme that I saw of Russell Wilson when everything was going to hell, still funny, I laughed, was somebody said, "Would somebody please let me off this ride?" I still laugh at that one. That's still the best one that I saw. Please let me off this ride. But there was just, you thought like, okay, he's going from Seattle to the Broncos. He's a lot better weapons. I mean, and I just don't know what went wrong. But yeah, hopefully just for reality sake purposes, the Broncos figure it out. But that's for a different day.
That's an off-season topic, to say the least, especially with Russell Wilson not only affecting Jerry Jeudy, who was on your squad, and of course Cortland Sutton and the rest of that offense, and then their coach gets fired. So,
Yep.
But this award, Kyle Pitts, 9 games started by Kilgore Trout. Okay, our next award, the worst move of the year. Now, this can be a dropped player that ended up producing in a big way, or a trade that didn't go an owner's way, or draft pick that went horribly wrong. So here are your nominees for the worst move of the year. Number 1, Eden W's trading Nick Chubb to Chad Powers fan club. Mari Cooper. So it's Nick Chubb for Amari Cooper and Cordero Patterson. I'll get into the specifics here in just a second. The Butterfingers drafting Najee Harris over guys like Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, and Derrick Henry. And the final nominee for worst move of the year, Eaton W's drafting Deontay Johnson in the 4th round. And before we announce the winner, just get into the specifics a little bit. Deontay Johnson, we all knew the situation in Pittsburgh as they were going into 2022 without Big Ben. We knew their offensive line was in shambles, and Johnson wound up finishing 35th overall amongst all wide receivers, finished averaging 5.3 points per game. The first trade of the year, the Chubb for Cooper and Patterson. While Cooper had a solid fantasy season, Chubb was a top 5 running back and helped carry Eaton W's for a good portion of the season. And then Cooper would finish 11th overall amongst wide receivers, but Patterson finished 30th, missed 4 games due to injury, had 6 games with 10 points or less. And the final one, Todd was pretty much sold on Najee Harris heading into the draft this year. He finished 3rd a year ago in his rookie year. Jonathan Taylor was the first running back off the board, so Todd drafted his guy over the likes of Austin Eckler, who led all running backs with 325 points. Christian McCaffrey finished 2nd. Derrick Henry, who finished 4th. So the winner of the worst move of the year It's the Butterfingers drafting Najee Harris 3rd overall. Todd, what do you got to say for yourself?
Well, what can
Whoop.
I say that hasn't already been said about natural disasters? Because Najee Harris just plain sucked,
No, I wouldn't say he sucked.
well,
He wasn't worthy of a top
second
3
over.
pick.
Yes, yeah, and again, and I always, when I go over my rankings and I read all the analysis and you guys told me as well. I mean, again, I don't forget
You
that.
tried to bash it into your skull.
Yeah, I mean, bashed my skull, but I guess I didn't want my skull bashed in. But Najee Harris did that for me. I thought, okay, no Big Ben, and obviously that might be a red flag there. Like, well, no Big Ben, so defenses are just going to hone in on on the running game because they're going to either have a rookie quarterback or Trubisky. I mean, obviously at least now it looks like rookie Pickett looks like the real deal. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, obviously I literally missed the boat. I mean, on that one, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, I could have drafted Justin Jefferson, all these great players that just, had great seasons, and who knows how my season would have went. But I just, I had a gut feeling and thought I was like, go with Najee Harris. He might surprise a lot of people. And well, he surprised a lot of people by sucking. So that's how I feel about that. So we can move on now.
We're not ready to move on yet. Let Mikey have his say.
Well, that last line of yours was the perfect reason why it failed. You have the number 3 overall pick, and you're thinking, I'm going to draft the guy that I think is going to surprise people. I just don't understand that line of thinking with the number 3 overall pick. Like, you're looking for, I get to pick like one of the whatever top
You're
3
looking for
players
a sure
in the league.
thing.
Exactly. Like, if you want to surprise people, okay, rounds 3 or 4, okay, that's kind of where you can pull that out. But 3rd overall, no, you want to be as sure as you possibly can.
Austin Eckler had 120 more points than Najee Harris. And Chris McCaffrey had 99 more points than Najee Harris. Whoops.
Yeah,
You know what that reminded me, Todd, of is when Nathaniel Hackett, decided to go for that ridiculous 60 whatever yard field goal in Seattle instead of letting them go for it on 4th down and 4, because he thought, well, I'm going to surprise people.
It's a good analogy, Mikey. That's a good analogy.
Well, it'll be interesting how Todd surprises us next year in the draft. We'll just have to wait and see on that. Let's move on to the next award. How about the best move of the year? Here are your nominees. The Lemonheads, trading Chris Godwin and Darrell Henderson to the Butterfingers for Kenneth Walker and Keenan Allen. Yours truly needed a replacement for Rashad Penny, who went down with a season-ending injury. So picked up Penny's backup and Kenneth Walker. Todd needed a wide receiver with Keenan Allen still injured and who didn't really have a timetable when he was going to be back. So sent Allen and the Rams starting running back and Henderson. Walker broke out for over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns, finished 16th amongst all running backs, despite not starting until the week 5. Excuse me. Allen wouldn't start until week 11, but would score double figures in 6 of his final 7 games down the stretch. The next nominee, the Gonzo Cats, picking up Gardner Minshew. Picked him up off free agency before his semifinal matchup in the playoffs. News broke earlier that week that Jalen Hurts was not going to be playing in that matchup. The Gonzo Cats MVP caliber quarterback not going to play that week and didn't play the next week either. Pollen did not have a backup on his bench and went with the Eagles' backup quarterback, and boy, did he deliver 50 points against the Cowboys defense, and also found Gonzo Cats wide receiver Devontae Smith, who twice scored touchdowns, 15 points, so 75 points between the two, leading the Gonzo Cats to the semifinal win and eventually to the MHA championship. And the final nominee for Best Move of the Year, the Lemonheads picking up Jamal Williams off of free agency on September 14th. DeAndre Swift, of course, injured early that season. And after seeing Williams score 2 touchdowns versus the Eagles in week 1, yours truly picked him up, and he would go on and break the Lions record for most rushing touchdowns in a single season, which included a big 3 spot against the Giants in week 11. So your winner for Move of the Year, Gardner Minshew, picked up by Kilgore Trout. Obviously, winning the championship with Gardner Minshew, although he wasn't massive or great in the final week. He also didn't kill him. So that is your winner. Thoughts, guys, on this? I felt like we talked about this one a little bit, trying to decide amongst those. Those were 3 tough, 3 great nominees, and to pick the final one was difficult.
Yeah, because I mean, Gardner Minshew. I mean, again, we didn't even think. I don't think any of us, had him on even ranked or whatever like that, and
Who's that?
thought Minshew.
Okay,
yeah, but I mean, Gardner Minshew, I guess, had his, guess we can call it his Nick Foles moment, and just surprised everybody. Another. So I think that one definitely, and the fact that led into a championship, it's pretty good.
Mikey, any thoughts on any of these? Or, I mean, I feel like the Minshew was heavily. I mean, you pick up a guy. You have Jalen Hurts, who is in the MVP caliber category, and then he's not playing. For myself, who was even like feeling pretty good about it because Minshew had thrown only a handful of passes all season long, and comes out and puts up a 50 spot. Despite, I think our big thing was, well, Jamal Williams was all season long and helped me win some games. But I mean, when you're in the playoffs, that's what matters the most. You know that better than most.
Yeah, ultimately that was kind of the crucial, way to decide that award. Like, that one move when he needed it was the one that put him over the top, against you to get himself to the championship and ultimately win it all. And, it sucks when you're one of your best players, and Jalen Hurts was probably his best player, gets hurt. But I mean, savvy move by him, picking up Gardner Minshew, and he's got himself a championship and this award.
Yes, he does. I'm happy for him. Let's go on to the next award. Let's bring you the nominees for the Comeback Player of the Year. This was one that was also very difficult to go through. The nominees: Saquon Barkley, after finishing 32nd last year amongst running backs, especially coming off an ACL tear 2 years ago. A lot of folks didn't have that much faith in that he would return to his amazing form back in his rookie and sophomore seasons. But Cooper's Cousins would draft the Giants ball carrier late in the 2nd round, and he would look like his old self, finishing 6th overall amongst running backs, 1,300 rush yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, and 57 receptions. Our next nominee, Chris Godwin. He finished 15th this season after finishing 15th last season, but missed the final 2 games of 2021 due to an ACL tear, which put the fear in the owners for the 2022 draft. In fact, he fell to the 7th round to the Lemonheads. He didn't play much in the first 3 weeks, but would go on to catch 104 passes for just over 1,000 yards. The third and final nominee for Comeback Player of the Year, Miles Sanders. Previous year, he finished 42nd, only had 754 yards rushing in 12 games, 0 touchdowns, after finishing 22nd in his sophomore year and 15th amongst running backs as a rookie. But what a season for the Eagles running back. He finished 15th after rushing for 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 20 receptions. So your winner for Comeback Player of the Year is Saquon Barkley. How about that? What a season for Barkley and that New York Giants team. Dable comes in, gets him to the playoffs, and it was fun to kind of watch Saquon get back to it. We were all kind of concerned about his explosiveness and being able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Didn't catch a ton this year, and I don't know if that was just based on their other options. How many other great other options they had in terms of receivers, but That was just not in the cards, but he did run for 1,200 yards and looked good doing it.
Yeah, he really did. And ultimately, it's funny the Giants are still playing. He's a big reason why. Like, after, just having the last couple of years being kind of injury prone, he kind of got that label on him. And I know I did not believe in him coming in, injury risk being part of it. And I just didn't like what I had seen from Giants offensive line, quarterback play, receivers, and all that. It all scared me. And he proved me wrong. He looked like he was back to the rookie Saquon.
Yeah, I mean, I was right there with Mikey, too, with the fact, like, well, he's injured the last 2 seasons. I mean, can you really trust him? And he played with a different mentality. And I think going into next year, I mean, again, we're prisoners of the moment. So regardless what he does the rest of the the playoffs or whatever, people are going to be like, oh, Saquon's going to move up draft boards next year. And people are going to say like, whoa, well, Saquon's back. That's just the way reality and fantasy works is where we think like, oh, he's back to his old self. We don't have a crystal ball. If we did, we'd all be millionaires, but we're not. So in that case, who knows? Saquon, might be in that top 15, top 10, maybe running backs, because people are going to be like, oh, Saquon's back to his old self, so I'm going to draft him high.
Well, I mean, he was drafted in the second round this year. I feel like that's probably going to happen again in 2023.
Oh, somebody will draft him in the first round. Because somebody will be like,
maybe, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know if I would, but just based on the reasons that Mikey said, which I think is one of the reasons why we ended up going with Barkley over Sanders, considering how great Miles Sanders was this year. He was definitely a guy. I mean, he was drafted in the 5th round, I believe. And I know that doesn't sound too low, but you're talking about how many running backs went before him and ended up having the season that he ended up having. And a lot of that was due to the Eagles offense, and everybody thrived in that offense, where Barkley, Daniel Jones had a solid season. I don't want to crap on him, but Barkley was a main reason why that offense was more efficient.
100%.
But really, with the Giants, they're more defense first, where I think the Eagles are more offense first. Miles Sanders is a big beneficiary for that. So Godwin, when we were talking, I was surprised Godwin had 104 receptions. I shouldn't be, considering Tom Brady led the league in completions. But we'll see what happens with Chris Godwin next year. We'll see if Tom Brady's still there. And if he is, can he get that touchdown number up? Because he could finish higher than 15th. All right, so let's go to the next award. I was trying to find a better name, better than the surprise player of the year. I tried to went with like football phenom of the year. So I don't know if that'll stick. Go ahead.
How about the I don't know, the Bobby Boucher or what's his name from the Replacements?
You're asking me about a guy from the Replacements?
Keanu Reeves' character.
Neo.
No. Well, it's very good. No, the character in the what was Keanu Reeves' character's name in the Replacements?
Yeah, Jack Traven.
No,
Devil's Advocate.
No, what was his name? He played the football player. What the fuck was his name? That's Flacco.
Joe Flacco.
No, not Flacco.
He played Joe Flacco in a movie?
No.
John Wick.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
John Wick.
No, the movie Replacements, where he played we played the quarterback, where Keanu Reeves played the quarterback. What was his name in there? In he played in the movie.
Willie Beeman.
No. Beeman. No.
Shane Falco.
A flipping computer right in front of you.
Sorry.
Shane Falco.
Edie Falco.
Shane Falco.
Shane Flacco. There we go. There it is. There we go.
Falco.
There we go. There you go. That's the name of the award you have to hit.
So you
No.
can't even get that. Why am I going to name it after that when you don't even know what it is?
Fine. Bobby Boucher then, all right?
Anyway, the surprise player of the year. Here are the nominees. Josh Jacobs, from potentially in the Josh McDaniels doghouse to a top 3 running back. Jacobs had a solid 2021 season where he finished 11th. Was not seen as a high ceiling guy starting in the Hall of Fame game when no other offensive starter even played. He fell in many draft rankings, including yours truly, but would go on and lead the NFL in rushing, more than 1,600 yards, had 12 rushing touchdowns, and also grabbed 54 receptions. Kenneth Walker III, the Seahawks known from running the ball a ton, but also had a ton of running backs on the roster. Of course, they lost Chris Carson to retirement, leaving Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, and Travis Homer as the running back core for the 2022 season. But they also drafted a running back in the second round. He didn't get much run in the first 4 weeks, but Penny was awesome down the stretch. Also stepped in to have 9 games of 10 or more points. And our final nominee for surprise player of the year, Tony Pollard. Pollard sort of broke out in 2021, but was still seen as the backup in Dallas behind the main man himself and Ezekiel Elliott. The Gonzo Cats drafted Pollard in the 9th round, and it paid off big time. Pollard would finish 8th overall amongst all running backs, 218 points, 1,000 yards rushing, 9 rushing touchdowns, 39 receptions, and 3 more touchdowns via the reception. And the winner for surprise player of the year, Kenneth Walker III. So Todd, just give me some of your thoughts there. I know that was a guy you traded away. You traded him right before he broke out. He had I think he had a 20-point game right after you traded him. But you were pretty high on him getting the surprise player of the year.
Yeah. When he got drafted from Seattle, I thought like, okay, he'll have a really good opportunity because Chris Carson's there. Rashard Penny always gets hurt, and obviously, it was looking like I was actually a little surprised that he wasn't the starter at the beginning. I mean, obviously, because Chris Carson retired. Rashard Penny then was the next one up, but he's always injury prone. And, I saw a few of his games, even going back to college when at Michigan State. And he was kind of a versatile back, and I think now he'll be the starter. He'll be the starter next year. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, at the time, I needed wide receiver help. Because I had Aaron Jones, and I was still Najee Harris is going to figure this out. He's going to figure it out. So I was like, that's okay. I'll trade him because I need wide receiver help because Keenan Allen decides he doesn't want to play football or especially when he's on my team or anywhere else. So I thought it was it was a good trade, and obviously Chris Godwin was attached to Tom Brady, so that I was like, okay, great. This is one of his best targets, and that's why I made the trade. But yeah, Kenneth Walker, he broke out, and obviously rookie running backs, are always going to be drafted more than rookie wide receivers, and he busted out and showed the NFL world, hey everybody, I'm here.
Mikey, I don't think Kenneth Walker was your pick for this. Was that correct?
He wasn't. I was beating the drum for Josh Jacobs because, as I mentioned, when we were talking about this, like if you would have, told me at the beginning of the year that Josh Jacobs would have led the league in rushing and finished, top 3 in our league and points scored, that, I would have bet all the money I had, and I would have laughed at everybody in the room. And it just, I mean, his own team didn't necessarily believe in him. Yeah. They didn't give him the 5th-year option. He's now going to be a free agent. So to have the type of season that he did with over 1,600 yards, I mean, I felt like his season was it was amazing.
Yeah, he was stellar. And all of us surprised. And it bothers me because I had Jacobs high before the Hall of Fame game, and then all this stuff went down. And NWA believed in him. Obviously, he's a Raider fan, so maybe that played a factor into it. I liked what I saw from him last year. But Kenneth Walker, talk about a surprise. A guy, I mean, I know Todd said, well, he would have the opportunity, but when you have a plethora of guys ahead of him, you don't know when he's going to start. And he showed something in that fourth game that kind of stood out to me once Penny went down. And I said, well, maybe I can get him low. Maybe he doesn't pan out. I don't know, but I got to take a chance. And because I knew the Seahawks run first, even with Geno Smith in this season. And they built that offensive line to do so. And they always seem to run the ball really well. I mean, we were talking about like Chris Carson. Mikey and I were big Chris Carson guys. And I liked what I saw from Penny down the stretch last year. So I figured, well, they'll put in Kenneth Walker. I liked what I saw in the couple of quarters that he played and ended up trading for him and ended up helping me out get to the playoffs. All right, so we go to the next award. 2 more left to go. And we'll start with the nominees for Bust of the Year. We'll start things off with Mark Andrews, who was drafted in the 3rd round, drafted as the 2nd tight end off the board. He would finish 5th amongst all tight ends. And while that doesn't sound too bad, Andrews led the league in points after just 6 weeks with 93, but would score 51 the rest of the way with just 1 double-digit game. And that came in week 17 when, my season was already over. Next nominee, Alvin Kamara. Drafted in the 1st round by the NWA, the Saints running back was drafted as the 7th running back off the board and would finish 18th. 897 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 57 receptions, 2 receiving touchdowns. Kamara, who averaged 74 receptions per season the previous 5 years, only mustered up 57. Not a good season for the Saints running back. And the final nominee for Bust of the Year, Jonathan Taylor, the 1st running back off the board after a stellar rookie season. He scored 341 points 1 season ago, had 1,800 yards rushing. What do you have? 20 total touchdowns, but this year finished 32nd. He did have some decent games, but also missed 6 games. By the time Taylor kind of showed signs of life, it was too late for Chad Powers' fan club, and then he ended up missing the really kind of last 8 games or so anyway. So big time disappointment. And the winner of the Bust of the Year for 2022, Alvin Kamara. Mikey, some of your thoughts on Kamara, who, is seen kind of for a while was seen as the top 3 guy based on the receptions. You talked about the 74 receptions per year, and that was even 2 years ago when he had 57, or 47, excuse me. Before that, he was averaging 80, a little over 80. But man, just disappointment. I know a lot of things went wrong with with the New Orleans team this year, but Kamara, not a great running back despite his 1st round value.
Yeah, and it's just surprising given, his lack of, touches. He's somebody that, gets carries, but also, gets involved in the receiving game. And like this year, I mean, he had 7 games where he was under 10 points, which is just for a 1st round pick, it's just not good. And I know, Andy Dalton running the show, it just, I don't know. It just, for me, it's just, something was off. Like, I don't know if it was just him and his lack of production or them not using him correctly. I'm not sure what it was, but he had an awful season.
I know some of the fans or the owners who are listening asking, why didn't we choose Taylor over Kamara? Since Taylor was drafted as the 1st running back off the board and he was terrible. And why do you think, why did we go with Kamara over Taylor, Mikey?
I mean, part of it with Taylor was injury. He missed a lot of time due to injury. Now, he wasn't like the greatest before that injury occurred, but I just felt like Kamara played pretty much a full year. And
15 games.
Yeah, he just, if you take out the 1 game he had 37 against the Raiders, like, who knows where he would have finished. He finished 18th overall, but who knows, take that 1 game out where he would have finished. It just not good for the majority of the year.
Todd, was your pick Jonathan Taylor?
Yes. I mean, the expectations and obviously where he was drafted. I mean, obviously got hurt. That, that obviously plays into it. But, he just wasn't the Jonathan Taylor that he was last year. I know the offensive line was a little beat up too, I believe, but I just the expectations, being the number one, being the first player taken, regardless of position, and you don't produce like you did last year. That's tough, because it goes back to you guys' point. You talking about getting a sure thing, and Jonathan Taylor thought it was going to be a sure thing, and he just didn't produce the way that the way he was projected to.
The thing I'll say about it is Kamara has played on less than stellar Saints teams before and produced, where Taylor's team this year, like, I can't blame him wholeheartedly. The offensive line suffered. The defense was bad. Obviously, the quarterback situation with Matt Ryan, not good. They fired their coach midway through the season. I think maybe that kind of stood out as well. That's why we went with Kamara over Taylor. Because Taylor had some games. He had like a 4-game stretch where he looked pretty incredible. But again, injuries, always hard to go against someone that had injuries, where Kamara just didn't look like himself. And I don't know if this is kind of a trend, because he wasn't a top 5 guy last year either. So something to keep an eye on as we go forward. Okay, let's get to our final award. And of course, it's the 2022 Most Valuable Player of the Year. Here are your nominees. The Gonzo Cats waited on a QB, and the Eagles quarterback, who broke out a little bit last year, broke out in a major way here this season. He finished 9th overall, and that was after missing 2 of his games, or he probably would have finished a little higher than 9th. He had 3,700 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 760 yards rushing, and 13 touchdowns. And just a spectacular season. 7 games or 50 or more points. It was big for them, big for big for Gonzo Cats when he was trying to really kind of get into the playoffs and move up those seeding. He had some pretty big weeks down the stretch. Our second nominee, Justin Jefferson, another year of the wide receiver. Of course, we talked about Cooper Kupp's brilliant 2021 season. The Vikings wide receiver was on a path to try and take down Calvin Johnson's record for most yards ever in a single season. Came up a little short, but he was still spectacular. Of course, he finished as the number 1 wide receiver overall, 269 points, 128 receptions, 1,800 yards, 8 touchdowns, had 8 games of 20 or more points. And our final nominee for MVP, Travis Kelce, the first tight end drafted in the second round by the Hot Tamales, would finish with one of the best tight end seasons in history. 110 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 12 TDs. He finished with 242 points, 80 more than the second place tight end in TJ Hawkinson. And the winner for most valuable player in the 2022 MHA season, it's Travis Kelce. What a year. Little bitter he didn't do this last year for me, but such is. I've learned to let things go. Travis Kelce with the Hot Tamales. Of course, we all know how the Tamales finished this season, 12-2. He was a big part of it. Mikey, he was on your team all season long. What a year for the tight end who, despite being over 30, continues to pile up the points in a major way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he was the best part of it. Being able to have a guy like that, I say gave me an unfair advantage over most teams, because, tight ends, we've talked about it. I mean, I know I've talked about it exhausted, talk about how crappy tight ends are every single year. I hate doing the tight ends podcast, because it's like, you just look at, once you get past the first couple options, it's just, you don't want any of them. Having Kelce in that lineup it's amazing. I mean, he had, a stretch during the season of 9 games where he was, double digits, and that's just something that you just don't find out of that position. You mentioned it, 80 points more than the second place guy. That's ridiculous. And I mean,
like you said when we were talking the other day, that's unfair.
Yeah,
I like how you said that.
Like, I mean, you could just, for me, I was just able to plug that in. Meanwhile, most other teams are scrambling, just, trying to find that streamer tight end for the week.
Not Kilgore Trout. He loved Kyle Pitts and his 3 points.
Yeah, and Dylan loved Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, that was another guy that we talked about.
But yeah, I mean, awesome year. I was glad that I made the right choice because I mentioned at the draft I was considering him and Aaron Jones in that round too, and I am glad I made the decision that I did.
Did he end up having more points than Aaron Jones?
I'm
looking right now. 242 points. Jones, 220.
He did. But it almost doesn't matter because just given the position scarcity of the tight end, it's so much...
Yeah. So much valuable.
Yeah, it's so much more valuable than that.
Todd, any thoughts on the MVP, Travis Kelce, or any of the other guys we talked about in the nominees?
I mean, I think I picked Justin Jefferson. I think is for my MVP and what he did. He looked so dominant. I think he had a few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks that he didn't put up 20 points, but for the most part, what he was doing was like video game type numbers and so forth. So I think if anything next year going in, just looking at maybe crystal ball here, Travis Kelce and Justin Jefferson, I would not be surprised go in the top 5.
Number 2 to Todd is what he's saying.
Well, I didn't say that, but
we know Todd is in love with Justin Jefferson.
Hey, I mean what he did, and the fact that the fact that I picked Najee Harris, that obviously changed the draft a little bit, because the fact that Justin Jefferson landed at you, Eric, at number 9. You didn't think Justin Jefferson was going to fall that far. So,
honestly, no, I didn't think I had a chance. And when he was there, I definitely jumped at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was hoping to get a highly touted wide receiver, and Cooper Kupp was gone. So, yeah, super thrilled, and it paid off in a major way.
Yep. So
here's a quick question before we get to the All MHA team.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a chance at Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson, who are you guys drafting? Remember, Cooper Kupp last year had 332 points, 63 more than Justin Jefferson.
I'll go Jefferson just because I don't know what's going to happen with Stafford.
I'll go Jamar.
He's coming back, right?
Well,
yeah,
it's early, but I heard somewhere that he was coming back.
He's coming
back.
But
but I'm just more about like the injury part of it too, is because when you have injuries like that, it kind of affects.
Well, obviously he missed a majority of this season. He'll probably be 100% when the season starts next year, unless it's some sort of lingering type of issue. But I feel like he's got plenty of time, and McVay's coming back too, right?
Look, yeah. Todd's mind's made up. All right, he already knows who he's picking. So
who are you picking, Mikey? I know we're not going to have that opportunity, but
I'll pick Jamar Chase.
Answer the question.
I mean, right now, God, that's so tough. I think I still would go Cooper Kupp, just given, like, even when before he was hurt, like, you saw what was happening. Like, it was the same thing. Like, they force feed him. I mean, like, if you look at the average per game basis, like, Cooper Kupp is ahead of Justin Jefferson. He was number 1 in the league. I mean,
just looking at Cooper Kupp, he played 9 games this season, and he still finished 21st. That's how good he was. 25, 26, 14, 20, 19, 12, 18, 20, and then hurt.
Yeah.
So he missed almost half the season, and he still finished in the top 25. Yeah, crazy. I think Cooper Kupp would be my pick too, unless something crazy. But if we're talking everybody's healthy, all the coaches are back, Cooper Kupp was phenomenal. So we'll see if Todd follows suit when we get closer. All right. Our All MHA award. This will be the last thing we do before we get out of here. We all kind of talked quickly, But I mean, there was a couple discrepancies, and most of these were easy. So we just picked a team of quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. Our quarterback, no surprise, Patrick Mahomes led our league in quarterback scoring. The man who led the running back scoring department, Austin Eckler. I picked Josh Jacobs based on how great he was all season. Christian McCaffrey had a stellar second half, I would say. So it was Eckler and McCaffrey. No surprise, Justin Jefferson, one of the wide receivers. The second wide receiver, Devontae Adams, two. Well, I just can't speak. 2 of us decided Adams. One said Stephon Diggs. And, I mean, it's hard to pick between those 2 guys, but Adams was the pick. Travis Kelce, no surprise there. Daniel Carlson had 11 50-yard field goals this season. Guy that Eric drafted at the beginning of the season. And the defense, New England. So the all MHA team, Mahomes, Eckler, McCaffrey, Jefferson, Adams, Kelce, Carlson, New England's defense. Well, there you go, gentlemen. The award show. We can take off these uncomfortable tuxedos now or your painted shirt.
Yeah, there you go.
No one told me that I was going to have to be a stripper.
Well, you know, got to be ready. You never know when your name's going to be called, when that ass is going to be called. Got to be ready.
Just make sure to give me a nice name.
You got to come up with your own stripper name. I'm not good at that. Buck Nasty, and I just stole that from Seinfeld.
Buck Naked was Seinfeld.
Oh, Buck Naked.
Buck Nasty
was
G.
Dave Chappelle.
It was G's team. There you go. Was G a stripper at some point?
Yeah. But Buck Nasty, that's from Dave Chappelle, isn't it?
That's from Dave Chappelle as well. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. So, guys, what are we going to talk about on next week's show? Well, we're going to kind of do a season recap in terms of where we went right, where we obviously went wrong, which is a lot of it. Talk about some board bets and just kind of talk about some preseason talk and look back on the year, really. And Kevin is going to join us for that show. So just kind of look back and, you know, we had some predictions and we had some bold predictions and we'll just kind of look back on it all, you know, and really, I don't know if depressing is the right word or we look like morons or the reason why people shouldn't listen to this podcast, but there was some stuff we were right. I've kind of gone through it already and some interesting stuff so far. And, you know, I would say we'll go through the trivia, but we know who won MHA trivia this year. It wasn't Ty.
I want to put in an investigation. Okay.
An investigation?
Yeah.
Like you want to like do a recount or something?
Yeah. Want to, you know, how do we know Mikey wasn't looking at the computer? Okay.
Oh well, that I can't help you.
I know.
We just got to assume that Mikey's a good guy and wouldn't cheat.
We did
he's a smart dude.
We did like 1 or 2 of them live.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean in person?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So there you have it. So tune in next week for all of that fun stuff. Our MHA 2022 season's coming to an end soon. And then we'll be back at it, of course, with the draft at some point and rookies. And we'll be in July before you know it. And we'll be getting ready for season 22 of the Mile High Affiliates Fantasy Football season of the league, really. So for Todd Diamond, Mikey Renault, I'm Eric Lansing. We'll see you next week on the MHA podcast.